Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, good morning and welcome to Monday's edition of Sidelines. Rob Browne here with you. Great lineup today. It is cold, springtime in Parkin, Arkansas, Memphis area. It's cold. Cold always, usually till about Memorial Day, and then it gets hot and everybody will be wishing it was cold. So anyway, deal with what you got to deal with and dress for it. Jason Caldwell starts with us batting first in the leadoff position inside the Auburn Tigers. We will be joined then after that in segment number 2. But Matt Dean should be on here momentarily from over in Memphis at Rhodes. He'll be joining in. I know he's got some questions for Jason as well. And we'll also, in segment number 2, hour number 2, we will have Franz Beard, GatorBetMedia.com. He always has a lot to say, his daily thoughts, his final pithy thoughts. And Wess Moore will check in ESPN 103.7 The Buzz in Little Rock in the 4th segment, talking about the Hogs and things out west like Oklahoma as well. So remember, follow us on Twitter at @sidelines_live. And you can also make sure and keep up with us 6 days a week, 25 shows a month at least. That's 50 plus hours of content. How do you do it? You get the best guests on there. You engage those guests. You let them talk. You let them give you the information that you need. So without any further hesitation, good morning, Matt and Jason. Jason, already got the questions coming in. Boom Caldwell, they call you. And by the way, I was reading the website last night. That's pretty fun. I was hoping Auburn could get the sweep, but isn't baseball a fun sport to watch?
It is. The thing about it is the unpredictability of it because, especially in college baseball right now, it is really, really tough. When you're talking about the portal holdovers, pitchers are normally the people that get drafted now, and position players hang around. And so you have a bunch of old position players and a bunch of young pitchers trying to get them out. And then you add into that guys throwing harder than they ever been, and there's more injuries now. And it's not just in college baseball, it's high school baseball, it's professional baseball. So you have to depend on more younger guys. And so that's why you see, what you've seen. You've seen Auburn have issues throwing strikes. LSU gave up 9 runs on Sunday, still won because they're really good. But it's hard right now. And so for Auburn to go up to South Carolina and win 2 out of 3 was huge for them heading in, to trying to continue to kind of wrap up a postseason.
Yeah, I think you were talking last week, and I was reading you and Philip Marshall's stuff on Inside the Auburn Tigers website of those final 12 games. Y'all felt like Auburn needed to win 6 or 7 of them, getting 2 out of 3 at South Carolina. Even Meatloaf would be proud about that one. That they almost got the third one, 8-7. But you're right. Auburn went to their 8th or 9th pitcher during the game yesterday. That you laid out that case. You win, I give. That was, and Alsop was throwing some heat, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing about him. He can throw it really hard. He's 97, 98 miles an hour. Yeah. It's just a matter of, like most guys, trying to figure out, how to hone it in, rein it in, and you have to count on guys taking the next step. Chase Alsop hasn't been able to take the next step for this team, and then you talk about taking out Joseph Gonzalez for he's gonna get 5 innings out of Joseph Gonzalez this year, so that's your number one guy. Tommy Sheehan was the guy that you were counting on. I thought to probably be a weekend guy. He's had bone spurs, and now Chase Alsop. That's the 3 guys I thought were going to be with the weekend rotation for Auburn this season. It honestly reminds me a whole lot of what Ole Miss did last year. Ole Miss got really hot at the end of the year. They rode it to a national championship. They did it because they had 2 dominant starting pitchers. Auburn hasn't found those guys yet, but we've seen it that you can ride some momentum and an offense for a while in baseball, and we'll see if this team can keep it going. Because they beat number 2 last weekend. All you got to do now is turn around and play number 1, and so it don't get any easier in this league.
No, it's like thank you, sir. May I have another? Matt Dean jumping here with Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers.
Good morning, fellas. And Jason talked about it in his first segment. For me, starting pitching is everything. And you look at, like Jason mentioned, Ole Miss did last year. And the beauty of college baseball, as I even see it at our level, is if your top two guys can do two things, if they can stay healthy, which is hard these days, and they can give you 6 to 7 quality innings, then you get a lead going into the bullpen, you're usually in pretty good shape. What happens is when you start getting those outings where the pitch count gets up, you only get 4 to 5 innings, you put more stress in the bullpen. There's not many college teams are built on day 3 of a series to go to their pen in the 5th or 6th inning and close out that game. I mean, that's just not the way it's built depth-wise. I'll give you an example at our level. We had a terrific season. We tied for the 2 seed. In our format, the first weekend is the highest seed host. So we were hosting the 6th seed. They were under 500. And their 1 and 2 shut us down, and we're done. 27-15, really good year. But we didn't get to go to the conference semis because their pitching was slightly better than ours. And they had a senior that just dominated 118 pitches complete game on Saturday. I was there. And, pitching's everything. And I'll tell you another thing. When you get to the major league level, the scouts are always looking for the swing and miss guys, right? Well, part of that is because, you spend so much money on offense and MLB rosters that sometimes your defenses are not the best. But I still love the pitch to contact guys. I love the Greg Maddoxes that can locate and make you maybe go outside for that. You have to hit the ball the other way against the better guys. And, so much now is predicated on the 97 above closer. I still love the pitch to contact guys, multiple pitches. To me, if you don't have a good changeup these days or something that sinks or moves, I don't care how fast it is. If it's 100 miles an hour and straight, it's going to get hit hard.
Yep, that's it. And here's the other thing too that's factored into college baseball now. We've seen it in Major League Baseball. People complain in Major League Baseball now when they watch a game on TV and a guy calls a strike that it's that far outside that box, and you go, guys, that's really close. I mean, that's a great pitch. Well, in college baseball now, because of TrackMan, now these umpires are now more cognizant than ever of the strike zone. So what used to be a strike zone that was this big, and now in college baseball is this big. So now you're having to throw the ball in the meat of the plate to get a strike. So those guys that are pitch to contact guys, they're not getting that call that's on the corner or just off the corner. I tell people all the time, it's like Greg Maddox and Tom Glavine were great pitchers. If they were asked to pitch now in baseball, they wouldn't be as good because you're not getting those strike calls that they got back then. And it makes it tougher. And especially when you're young, people go, you're either trying to pitch to the corner and you're walking guys, or you're throwing the ball over the middle of the plate and it gets hit hard. It's hard to pitch right now.
It is. Jason, it's like yesterday in the Auburn, South Carolina game, you hear the people booing and catcalling and whistling about the pitch clock. It reminds me a lot of tennis, all the little, people whistling and chirping and stuff. I don't want it. I hope it doesn't get like that.
Yeah. Thankfully there have been some of those things, but it hadn't been a whole lot. And I think, hey, here's the thing. If a guy's starting his motion and it hits 0, finish it. There's got to be some leeway there when this thing's being done. And so here's the thing I've said all along. You got a pitch clock. You're timing guys when they go visit a mound. But now guys are taking offensive timeouts, 2 outs and nobody on, and the guy's throwing 5 pitches, and all of a sudden the third base coach calls his batter over and they talk for 2 minutes. Yeah. Well, why isn't that timed? And so listen, you're going to do it one thing, you got to do it for everything. And so why aren't the reviews timed? We got the reviews taking 3 or 4 minutes. If we're going to do it all, do it all. And so they made it really hard to pitch, and they've gotten what they wanted. And hey, here's the thing. I would much rather watch this than I did when they deadened the bats and we had 1-0 games where a double was celebrated like a home run. That was dreadful baseball to watch. I would much rather watch this, but they've also made it pretty tough on these pitchers. Yeah.
I mean, I've been hunting a long time. I can remember as a kid, the 1 duck limit. That was tough. You go out there, the point system. But Jason, I want to switch gears now. Talk about this transfer portal. Doug Dean, friend with the AU Dose, was sending me a bunch of information this morning about Casey Thompson and Peyton Thorne, 2 quarterbacks. Casey's at Nebraska, Peyton at Michigan State. And Casey Thompson had been at Texas. I think his dad played at Oklahoma.
Correct.
Okay. What
Yes.
any news on those two?
Yeah, Casey Thompson is still visiting, supposed to leave today, I think, from his
Okay.
official visit. Peyton Thorne, we'll see. Here's the thing about it. I think at this point, I think Auburn will add a quarterback because I think there's going to be a quality guy somewhere. That's what they're waiting on. They're waiting on somebody to go, hey, somebody to make our room better. That guy might not even start, but if you get a guy that can make you better and push Robbie Ash or whoever, that's the goal. You just want to get better. And so I think there's going to be that guy, whether it's Casey Thompson, whether it's Peyton Thorne, whether it be a grad transfer that jumps in here because there's going to be graduations happening in the next week or so. We could see some other guys hop up and get in there, as a graduate transfer somewhere. So I think there will be a quarterback added to this roster. I think we'll see TJ Finley leave, here shortly as well. And so you're going to need a third guy, a veteran guy anyway. And so I think that's what they're looking for. But they didn't want to take anybody, just anybody. They wanted to find a guy that made them better. I think now you start to see a few guys that can do that. So I would expect Auburn to add one of these guys. Just don't know which one it's going to be yet.
Yeah. Well, need help, that's for sure. And you saw with Alabama, I mean, they're not happy. And it's not it's a tough market. Your column yesterday, it's hard to find.
It shows you too how the craziness that's going on. Yeah. Alabama's recruited the quarterback position as well as anybody in the country.
Yeah. They've
gone out and found a transfer quarterback. I saw late yesterday that Ohio State took a commitment from a transfer offensive tackle from San Diego State. Who else is recruited better than Ohio State? And they take an offensive tackle from San Diego State. It's remarkable. It shows you how hard it is, and that even schools like that have recruited better than anybody in the country, they're going out and finding a position or two to go, hey, look, we got to get better. Here we are. We got to go get better. That's the difficulty right now. And even a place like that, people talk about developing talent. It's not happening at those places either. If you're not good by the time you're into your redshirt freshman year or your second year, they're moving on, going to somebody else. And that's shown up the last week.
Yeah. Matt, I'll tell you something. Give Jason street credibility in recruiting. 23 years he's been going out and watching everywhere, all over the South. And I remember in April of 20, kid out of Roanoke, Alabama, which is not too far from Auburn, about 431, 45 minutes away, all kind of bloodlines to Auburn. At that point, he was rated a 5-star. And I talked to Jason, and I would never say anything on this show that Jason tells me in confidence, but I just remember it. I'm just saying he's good, but the competition's not that great. And he's got a lot of work to do. And, he signs with Tennessee. And then Jeremy Pruitt is relieved of his duties. He transfers, gets out of his letter of intent, goes to Auburn. He's a 4-star, but Jason, you can see things. And Matt, that's as you as a coach, you've been in coaching in athletics for 32 plus years. You got a son on the football staff at Oregon with Dan Lanning. There's a reason why the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, but you see where I'm coming from with Jason? These kids are highly rated, but then Jason's able to say, well, look who he's playing against. I mean, compare that to, Marlon Davidson or Derek Browne.
Yeah, and even then, though, there's guys, even competition level, what you look for is a guy to dominate that competition. If you're not dominating that competition, that's the thing, because here's the thing. We just saw it in the NFL draft. You see NFL draft where they're drafted on potential. We just saw Anthony Richardson. Yeah. They're going, look, this guy's athletically gifted, and we're going to get it out of him. Well, you might. But you might be like, 60% of the other quarterbacks drafted in the first round. It may not work out because they don't have any higher percentage than recruiting rankings do either. They miss on a bunch of guys because they draft on potential and athleticism. Sometimes you leave football out of that. It's important. And so, for a guy like Dylan Brooks, he did not see him dominate the competition at that level. And so that for me was like, hey, it's the athleticism's there, but can you get that to that point? That's the question that you always have to answer. And it's the flip side. And it's why quarterback is the hardest thing. Yeah. Because quarterback is, you may not have the athleticism, but you might be the smartest guy on the field, really I mean, look at the San Francisco 49ers. Look at Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Look at Drew Brees. Those guys had no business doing what they did, and they were able to do it. Meanwhile, you get guys that had everything. I laughed because in the NFL draft process the other night, one of those people compared a quarterback to Jeff George, and I was thinking, guys, that's not the compliment you think it is.
No.
Just because you can throw a ball 80 yards does not make you a great quarterback. And so that's where we are right now.
Yeah. Matt. Yeah.
Yeah. Looking at the two quarterbacks you mentioned, I've seen Casey Thompson and Peyton Thorne play a lot. I watch way too much Big Ten football, guys. I actually like Casey Thompson as I don't like the fact this will be his third school in 4 years, but if Auburn's looking for someone to compete with him, and you look at what he did with the Nebraska team that Coach Frost left after 3 or 4 weeks last year. Yeah, he still battled. I give him a lot of credit. Iowa was playing for a chance to win the Big Ten West. He came into Iowa City the last regular season game of the year and threw for, I think, 278. I just looked it up, and they beat him 24-17. Iowa had a really good defense that had 3 guys taken in the top 4 rounds of the NFL draft. So if you're looking for competition, I've seen Peyton Thorne throw about 3 interceptions in the game too. So I like Casey Thompson better than Peyton Thorne if you're looking for a portal pickup. What's unique, going back to Jason's point about the San Diego State offensive lineman, this is where I think the rich get richer in the portal, is if you do have an injury, or let's say someone didn't develop like you thought they would, and you get this young guy that's really hungry to get some tape and compete.
Matt, hold that thought. Because we're going to take a quick break, and I want you to keep developing this and go back to Jason when you finish up, because this is why we love having smart people like you on this show. Right and back. Okay, Matt, you were continuing before the break, making some great points. You can't watch enough football. Jason and I think will agree with you on that. There's never too much football unless it's really, really bad.
Well, no. I mean, my son, like you said, is at Oregon, and Saturday in Autzen Stadium, 45,000 Duck fans were there watching the spring game. And what Oregon's done in the portal is remarkable. Dan Lanning has flipped that roster. Their defense has gotten a lot better on paper. They got a late transfer from Ole Miss, Tysheem Johnson, who's done a really nice job in a few weeks there. Heck, you want to go to the Big Ten, they picked up Justin Jacobs, 4-star linebacker out of Ohio that played for the University of Iowa. I think he's got a chance to be an NFL linebacker. And going back to the San Diego State kid, what an opportunity for that young man to go to Ohio State and compete. And maybe he wins the starting job, maybe he does not. But if he gets on the field, that's tape that matters for him to get not only drafted, but undrafted free agency, right? So the portal, we've said a lot of things about it, but there's a lot of opportunities for kids if it's done correctly.
Yeah, and here, the flip side, there's a lot of opportunities. There's no question about it. But with the push to have open free agency in terms of transfers, the push for NIL has it opened that door up too. But what it's also opened up, and if you're football, basketball, baseball, whoever it is, you're a coach right now, you don't have to go the Deion Sanders route and purge the entire roster. Yeah. But right now, you what we just talked about, if you're a place and those guys haven't developed quite as quickly as you said, then you got to usher them on down the line and move somebody else in. That's the flip side of this thing, is that there's no longer time to develop a guy 3 or 4 years and have him prepared and be ready to go. Those days are gone, unfortunately, and that's the byproduct. Hey, you get it. Hey, okay, you got everything you wanted. The flip side is something you don't want, which is, hey, if you're not good enough, you're going to be gone. And that's the unfortunate side of this thing.
And Jason, you raise a great point, because I feel really bad for the coach that develops that kid for 2 or 3 years at a, let's say, group of 5 school, and they're getting ready to have maybe a great year, and that kid wants more exposure. Yeah. You've done all the work, and they're going to go play in a Power 5 school their last year. So you're right, 100% correct. It goes both ways.
Jason, you also, in reading Inside the Auburn Tigers on the website last night, I love it. I go to autigers.com, and only 3 players from the Auburn class that signed February of 21 are still on the roster. And we've never seen that type of wholesale seismic change. You also referred to it earlier in this segment about baseball. You've got all the position guys, they're sticking around. Pitchers, not so. Jason, 2 things here. 1, you have a great future if you ever want to become an analyst on equities, because you're a truth broker. I've followed you a long time. But number 2 is, I think the portal's starting maybe to show some signs that it's going to slow down, because if all these position guys are hanging in there, maybe some pitchers will start doing it.
Yeah, the problem is they don't draft position guys as much because they're looking for big body length or all those things, and so you have guys that hang around for 3 or 4 or even 5 years that are really quality veteran hitters. That 20 years ago, those guys would have been drafted. Well, there's not enough baseball draft anymore. Mm-hmm. It's a shorter, compact, smaller draft.
Yeah.
So they might take 3 or 4 like this year. Dylan Cruz is going to get drafted really high of LSU. There'll be a few other position players that get drafted really high. Most of these guys won't get drafted high enough. And now, because of NIL, say, you know what? I can make as much money staying in school and not have to ride that bus and sleep in a hotel and live with 3 or 4 other guys. I can do that and stay in college another year. That's what you're seeing. Whereas pitchers, they're going to take those guys. Those guys that are throwing, they're going to keep drafting them high. So that's where in baseball, it's got this, like I said, I had an Auburn assistant, in the fall go, how do you get old on the mound? It's hard. It's hard to get old on the mound right now in college baseball. So that's what you look at from that side. And then football wise, you're right. This spring was slower. It picked up at the end from the portal standpoint. Here's what we're going to see now is how much this thing explodes when guys graduate at the end of May, even in the summer. That's where the transfer market could really open itself up again, heading even into August for some of these teams.
Yeah, there's a question here from a listener, Roy Munson, Ocelot, Iowa. Why doesn't Auburn recruit more upper Midwestern offensive linemen from states like Iowa, Minnesota, and Michigan? Because of the track record of those guys panning out. They seem to have a work ethic, just blue collar work ethic, and they don't mind, like the Nebraska offensive line factory for so many years, going into the weight room for 2 or 3 years and waiting their turn in line.
Yeah, well, if that still worked for Nebraska, they'd still be winning a lot of football games.
I know.
Guys don't do that anymore. Yeah. That's the point. You look Alabama just went to Iowa and got a guy. Auburn went and got Braden Smith a few years back from the Midwest. Yeah. By and large, those guys usually stay close to home and play in the Big Ten. And that's a lot of it. Here's the other part of that. A lot of times those guys aren't 4- and 5-star rated guys coming out. And so it's about projection, opportunity. And again, some of those guys do develop, but it's because of, you're trying to, and here's the thing. There's a lot of good offensive linemen that are closer to home. You just got to get your share of them. And that's been a bigger problem than going to the Midwest. It's been just signing them in general and developing guys. So it's worked out. I always had a bunch of those guys. They have, and a bunch of those guys that come out of that area. But you're right. It is about opportunity sometimes for them. And, Alabama just went and got Caden Proctor. In a year and a half, if we hadn't heard Caden Proctor's name, then my guess is he'll be back closer to home playing, because that's just the way it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jason, another thing before we go back to Matt, football recruiting, you go back 25 and 30 years ago, we had Forrest Davis was one in Birmingham. It was so biased and so tilted. Auburn could have signed the top 10 players in Alabama. And the Birmingham News lead story would have been Alabama dominates recruiting because they got number 11. I mean, so a lot of it is political, and it goes to where people are going to buy this stuff. But you look at the number of players in the Super Bowl that won when Tampa Bay played against Kansas City. There was one 5-star on that field, Leonard Fournette, out of St. Augustine High School, New Orleans, played at LSU, obviously. There were 24 stars on the two rosters, 22 3-stars, and then 41 others. So in a typical year with 3,300 kids signing Division I scholarships, maybe 1% will be 5 stars. 350 to 400 will be 4 stars. So close to 2,900 of them, 2,850, are going to be 3 stars, 2s, 1s, or others. So player development, as Matt talked about, you're out there at a group of 5 busting your ass for 2 or 3 years developing a kid, and he takes off on you, like the farm system in baseball.
Yeah, but that's, you're talking about individual players coming to collectively form a team in the NFL. But when we're talking about college football, we're talking about 1 to 85. It matters.
Yeah,
you got it, because you look at it, and if it didn't, then Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State wouldn't dominate college football, and they have, because they've recruited better than anybody else.
Yep,
and it's still the most important factor. I've said it, and I'll say it again. And hey, people get mad if they want to. Kirby Smart, Nick Saban, no different than anybody else. They're not just magical coaches.
Yeah,
they got the best players, and that's what happens when you have the best players. You can withstand injuries. You can do things that it matters, and that's where it is. And hey, look right now, those guys are getting drafted in NFL at a higher rate than anybody else too. And so when you're talking about college football, college athletics, especially college football, basketball has changed a lot, but in football, it still matters that you go out and develop the best players.
Yeah,
and you have more of them than anybody, then you're going to have a better chance to win than anybody else in the country.
Yeah. Matt, you talk about development. Look what Iowa does with players, the 2s and the 3s. But you're right. You've got to start with the best players, period.
Well, here's the thing. To mention that Iowa, they do a great job of developing those guys and getting them to the NFL, but it's depth of roster. You look up and they go 7-5. They can't score points. You can get those 4 or 5 guys, but you got to have 45.
Yeah.
4 or 5 don't help you a lot in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. Matt, along that line, what Jason's saying, coaches, I hope we don't lose a lot of coaches and say to hell with this, because I'm spending time, and from developing 16 years as a head coach in women's basketball, and then how many, 14 in men's. How many times did y'all develop kids that left you and you were just like ready to put your head through the wall?
Well, it just didn't happen back in the day, and talking about the offensive linemen, most of it, if you look at the trace offensive linemen from the start, most of them are all 2-3-star guys. And that's why I think the most position important coach on the staff, I think, is offensive line coach. I mean, you can have some 3-star guys that get coached to get in the weight room and fundamentally become a draft pick just because of the coaching. And I think another thing that's really interesting is, Jason's right about Iowa's roster. The thing that's really hard for Iowa is to get skill. And those 4- and 5-star guys that change the field for you and stretch the field for you, they may not always have 100 receptions, but man, it sure helps the slot guy get open, doesn't it? It helps helps the back get open too. So I've seen it a lot. That's why, like you mentioned, Caden Proctor, he had been committed to Iowa the whole time. And in the last 2 weeks of the process, Alabama came in and got him, and that happens. And Jason's right. If things aren't going well in a year and a half, he'll be somewhere else closer to home. But I think he's such a freak athlete. The guy reminds me a lot of Tristan Wirfs, who played at Iowa, was an Iowa kid, that's now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, all pro for a couple years, protected Tom Brady. I think Caden Proctor's just, can't miss guy. And the depth of the roster is an issue too. If you don't have enough of these guys, you can't – football, you're going to get injured. You can't sustain it. And that's why Alabama, Ohio State, Georgia, they're always there, depth.
Yeah. Jason, looking at recruiting, last year you did a great job of laying out the 22 4-stars in Alabama high school, state at 5.1 million people, 7 5-stars. What goes on in recruiting? Like Keldrick Falk was upgraded to a 5-star, but you still see him as a 4-star. And I mentioned there's 33, 1% are 5-stars. The consensus, I like the 24/7 composite, but 7 5-stars in that one state, that's 22% of the 5-stars in the country. Where is Auburn this year in terms of position right now on the top 12 players in the state of Alabama for the class of 24?
Yeah, obviously in a much better position than they were this time last year, and that's the thing. But it's a recruiting, not portal recruiting. Portal recruiting is a 2 or 3 day process. Recruiting is still a 2 or 3 year process, and so even coming in December, you're a year behind. Ryan Williams is I think the best player in the country regardless of classification. A 2025 wide receiver that is committed to Alabama. Dad played at Auburn for a couple of years from Mobile. And he was already committed to Alabama before these guys got on campus. Now they've gotten him on campus a bunch of times, but it shows you're like some of those things you're fighting to get back in. And there's some 24 guys in this class that Auburn is making a really strong push for, but those guys are already committed in the state of Alabama. You got 2 guys committed to Alabama, 2 committed to Georgia already from the state of Alabama for 2024. These guys are committed before December, and so that's the fight that you fight when you take over a new job. So they're making a push. We'll see how quickly. Here's the thing about it: can you put that product on the field early September, October to go? Okay, what they told me is exactly what I'm seeing. That was the problem among the many problems with Brian Harsin. The problem was, you're telling all these guys just watch. Well, then they watched and they went, well, that's not what I want to see. And so then nothing happens. They've said all the right things. They've been really proactive in recruiting. I think kids understand, hey, it's going to be a little bit of a process, but if you give them a little bit to lean on, I think then that opens the door much wider, even in really truly year one here.
Yeah. Another thing, we were Billy Roberts and I were in Atlanta last Tuesday night at the Marriott for the Auburn Ambush. And they had all the coaches. They had John Cohen there, Andy Burcham, Hugh Freeze, Bruce Pearl, John Kleiner, the golf coach, Greg Williams, the equestrian coach. They brought them in when everybody was seated, put them up on the podium, and after it was over, they whisked them out of there. No interaction with the fans, nothing. But the whole time we heard about is how much they need money and fundraising. Jason, I feel for you, man, what you have to go through every day. If I talked to my clients and treated my clients in wealth management practice like that, I wouldn't have any clients. Billy wanted to leave. He said, this is sorry. It's not right. But we're being hit on more and more and more. Thank God we got people like you that have stuck it out, because it's going to change. I feel the wrath of the fans is coming. So the next question is NIL. Are people giving more money to NIL than they are tithing to their church and money they're giving to their own children, maybe to get a house or get started in life? I mean,
they are at some places.
Yeah, crazy.
There's some people are, but it's not this thing that's just going crazy for the average fan. I thought this was going to be the average fan opportunity to go out and be involved in those things. And here's the thing. As much as we may not like it, it is reality. And the reality is right now, if you're not playing the NIL game, then it's going to be really hard to compete for championships at this point. That is just as brute fact as it gets, and it's not the way I want it to be. That's the way it is right now.
Yeah, Jason, we're going to take a quick break. It won't keep you much longer. Just got a couple of quick questions. There's a lot of people have questions from you on here, but appreciate them going out on the road like that. But go talk to the fans. You want to know the people that you're asking to write checks. We'll be right back with Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers. Matt Dean, Rhodes College. Links right after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers, Matt Dean over in Rhodes College in Memphis. And Jason, I know a couple of questions here. One of them is from a listener, Jethro Toll in Dahlonega, Georgia, wants to know strength and conditioning. It looks to me, watching Auburn play against Georgia, Alabama, LSU, some of the bigger SEC rivals, that Auburn was not as physical, not as big, and almost pushed around at times. What's looking to change from your perspective in the strength and conditioning program at Auburn?
Get better players.
Yeah.
I mean, people keep you just and here's my example. I've used it for years, and I'll keep using it. I could have trained my entire life, been as good as I could have ever been, and I couldn't have blocked Reggie White. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The more of those, I go back to it, the more of those bigger, stronger, faster guys you get to start strength and conditioning, the bigger, stronger, and faster those guys are going to be when you finish it. And that's it. You can't turn those guys into something else. And so, yes, you can do some things. And here's the thing. I think the thing that was missing the last 3 or 4 years, especially for Auburn, was the fact that they changed, especially under Brian Harsin, and tried to play Tom Brady NFL football, bucket passer, no tempo. You take away the advantage doing that, and you've got to be much better than the guy in front of you. When Alabama couldn't do it anymore, and even Georgia going tempo, when those teams said, look, we can't do that and win, you're not doing that at Auburn right now. So to me, but it comes back to this. Get better and bigger players and guys that are more athletic, and your strength and conditioning program will improve. I do think they're doing some things differently. It's kind of back now to Kevin Yoxall style where everything is centered around football and football-related things instead of, hey, how much can you bench press? To me, that'll be beneficial.
Okay. Well, that answered that second question because football's played on your feet. That's what the Yoks used to say. It's not bench pressing, it's playing it on your feet. Jason, thanks so much for being on here with us. We always appreciate it. Let people know how they can keep up with you and all the great work. And I always call it Inside the Auburn Tigers. It's 24/7, but there's so much information. Y'all don't really ever stop, do you? Because you can go there at any time. And there's updated information and there's message boards. It's Disney World for a sports fan, especially for an Auburn fan.
Correct. Yep. AuburnUndercover.com. That's kind of, the go-to place now, AUTigers.com as well. But yeah, you're right. I laughed at talking to someone the other day, and they were talking about they thought if they switched jobs, they might get 4 weeks of vacation time. And I thought that's 10 years right there. That's about what I get into a 10-year window. It doesn't stop. And, you're talking about kind of the coaches rushing out the other night. It's because of the world we live in now.
Oh, I know.
Bruce Pearl and Hugh Freeze have got guys on campus, that are visitors from the transfer portal. That's why you see more and more college coaches moving out of it, because there's now very little downtime for anybody involved, and that includes us.
Yeah. And in fairness, Hugh Freeze took his phone out like this and said, I've got guys texting me right now, and as soon as I leave here, I've got to do it. And that's kind of what I was going to say.
That's the unfortunate part of it nowadays.
Yeah. Jason, always look forward to your next visit, man. Have a great week.
Thanks, guys.
Okay. Hey, it's Jason Caldwell inside the Auburn Tigers. Love having him on here, talking about Auburn, but college football and everything in general. Matt, boy, we got into some deep stuff here. You really do know Big Ten football, and you talk about Casey Thompson, and you talk about other prospects that are out there. That Peyton Thorne at Michigan State. We talk with our Arkansas guys, Dudley Dawson and Wess Moore a lot. They talk about, that 1 through 22, 23 through 44. But really, it's 45 through 85. The SEC is a depth league. And we didn't even get into, Auburn had 5 players drafted, 4 more were free agent signees. So that's 9. And you look at the SEC and the Big Ten, they all have a bunch of guys drafted. But developing players, man, and then have them leave you, that's heartbreaking. And that's why I think we're going to see this thing turn. A lot of people are just beaten down. The defeated man is, you can't be that way. I think that coaches and the players, look in baseball, position guys stick around, pitching, they want that immediate. All this moving around, once we've had enough time to digest the data, Matt, and you're a very cerebral man, once people have digested the data, it's going to be fun to watch. And I'm looking for Tyler Dean, there at Oregon. Should he come to the South, he's a smart kid. He gets it, the social media part of it and everything. Man, my phone gets it a lot. Your phone gets it a lot. Could you imagine being a head football coach? When does it ever stop? There's got to be downtime. Are you burnt out?
So I'll give you an example. Yesterday was Tyler's 28th birthday. Okay. Coming off spring game and huge recruiting weekend for the Ducks. Now you got to take into account we're 2-hour difference, right? West Coast Central Time. His mom did not get a chance to FaceTime with him for happy birthday wishes until 9:30 Central Time last night. That's on a Sunday. That's how busy the director of scouting, whatever personnel title he's got, is on a weekend. And Jason hit it on the head. These coaches have no downtime anymore. None. And you're talking about my son, who's, a lowly recruiting guy compared to the head coach, what they're going through. Right. Yeah. So it's just it's a young person's game too. I'll be honest with you, Rob. That's what's happened to a lot of head coaches that didn't want to have this change because it was a seismic change. It changes quality of life. And it's really disheartening too. You work hard to get a kid, you develop a kid, and they leave you. And Iowa's a great example with Caden Proctor. Caden Proctor, 5-star offensive lineman, state of Iowa, committed to Iowa early on. His teammate, Xavier Namka, also at Iowa. And all of a sudden, because Iowa's collective, they're an NFL collective, they're getting better. It's nowhere near Alabama's. And, Proctor made a great decision for him and his family. I don't blame the kid. And the state of Iowa recognizes that those things happen. But think about this, Rob. This is how the game's changed. NIL is taking regional kids away from programs, sending them anywhere in the country. NIL. Portal is allowing disgruntled, I need more tape. Like, we want to talk about Iowa's offense, how bad it was last year. Last year, after the spring game, Rob, receiver returner Charlie Jones The one guy Iowa had coming back that stretched the field decides after the spring game, I'm going to Purdue because their offense is going to give me a chance to be drafted. He was right. He was drafted, I think, in the 5th or 6th round this year because he left to go get more catches and more touches. If he'd have stayed in Iowa's offense, he'd have had a third of that productivity. They may have won the Big Ten West because he was there, but what good did that did for the kid? And I think those are all factors. We see it as a fan. We see it as we want our team to build their roster. These kids see it as a business. And that's why I have a different perspective than some of the – even though I'm a fan, I see it for some of the kids and why they're doing it. Charlie Jones is a great example. Go research him. Go Google him. Charlie Jones had like 100 catches for Purdue this year. The most he had with Iowa in his 2 years prior was like 35 or 40, I believe.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, Rob. I get it.
Yeah. Well, got an interesting question for you. This is rather interesting. From Bernard P. Fife, Deerfield Beach, Florida. Asked Matt, where is Bo Nix going? He's not leaving Oregon. But there are people who think he is.
Do you realize that Bo Nix in the early mock drafts for next year, 24, is rated 3rd overall behind Caleb Williams and Drake May? Bo Nix will be a first-round quarterback. When he was hurt at Auburn, did you ever envision that, Rob? I didn't.
Oh, we always knew he had the talent. It's just that with Gus Malzahn, developing quarterbacks is like having Uncle Charlie from My Three Sons as your head chef.
Well, think about this. He goes to play for a defensive coach, Dan Lanning, right?
Yeah.
And Dillingham, Kenny was there last year. Tremendous job.
Yep.
Kenny's the head coach at Arizona State. They bring in Will Stein as the offensive coordinator. Will Stein, I think, was at UTSA, had a prolific offense. All reports that I'm hearing out of the spring game yesterday was how improved the defense is, but how prolific the offense will still be. I mean, Bo Nix has got weapons, and Bo Nix had some red zone trouble in his career. I give him that. We get that. But those are correctable things, Rob, with coaching.
Yeah.
You know that. And I just think the young man, I think, okay, it's May 1, all right? Cinco de Mayo is Friday, I think. I'm making my early prediction. I got Oregon in the college football playoff this year. That's how good I think they're going to be.
I will not be surprised. Physically, Bo Nix is a great kid. I mean, his father, his family is as Auburn as it gets. His dad's at Phoenix City Central, 30 minutes away, coaching the football factory in the state of Alabama. That or Thompson High School in Alabaster, or who?
That's how bad Auburn had messed it up.
Yeah, they did.
Nix leaves.
Yeah,
he should have graduated a Tiger.
My son Wilson texted me from Charlotte the other night about Tank Bigsby going in the 3rd round. He said,
I love that kid.
He said, as much as I love him, he should have transferred to Georgia and been he would have been a 1st-round pick. Cartavius Tank Bigsby. Auburn is in the midst of the worst 3-year cycle of football in the modern era. I mean, 6-5 in 20, 6-7 in 21, and 4-8 last year, or 5-7 last year. Auburn has not had back-to-back losing seasons in a month of Sundays. And it's been – and Bo Nix left. A legacy quarterback left. That was a flock of canaries and seagulls in the coal mine there, man, that you better fix things because you're trending in the wrong direction. I'm not going to get up here and drink the Kool-Aid. I don't do that. I'm harder on Auburn than I am any other school. Right. And I'm just one guy, but I'm much harder, much more critical of Auburn. I'm seeing them do things, the right things now over and over and over, which is a positive. But last year, of the top 33 players in the state, you only got 3 or 4 of them. That's inexcusable. And the fact that Auburn, because I guess they didn't want to go through a lawsuit or the publicity, gave the $15 million buyout or whatever it was to Brian Harsin, and then they're still asking for money. I mean, think about it. I would have fired Harsin with cause because he was the laziest, sorriest recruiter, good for nothing I've ever seen. Make no effort. I mean, you're talking Otis Campbell of recruiting. That bad. And then Dan Lanning. Could you imagine? Good God. What's going on at Oregon? 45,000 for the spring game at Oregon? Hell, man. You'd have thought the Grateful Dead had been reincarnated and played at Autzen Stadium. They're changing. You talk about changing a culture? I mean,
Mariota was back coaching the green team. LaMichael James was one of the great running backs coaching the yellow team. If you remember, before Dan Lanning was hired, there were 14 alumni that signed a letter to the AD, Rob Mullins, that wanted to bring back people that could connect with the players from the past, right? They had brought in Willie Taggart, did not work. Mario Cristobal had left for Miami. And Dan Lanning was not their first choice. He gets there 10-3 first year. If Bo doesn't get hurt late in the Washington game, I contend they're in the college football playoff last year. Didn't happen. I get it. Yeah. I understand. And now they've got some juice. I'll give you a great example. So that recruiting personnel staff led by Marshall Malco, who used to be at Georgia with Kirby, he was also with Saban at Alabama, goes to A&M. My son works for him. 2 years ago, A&M had the number one recruiting class in the nation. Okay? Marshall leaves. Jimbo gets rid of his people underneath him. They go follow Marshall. You know what? Oregon is 9 now, and A&M is 36 in this morning's rankings. So you know what? Good. I hope it rots. That's how I feel. Just being honest. You got to be honest. You got to be honest to be on Sidelines. Free speech is alive and well. None of that crap, none of that woke crap. We're going to tell the truth, and damn it, you just did. Marshall Malco. He's the chief of staff. He is a stud. He's the best in the country, okay? And he's great friends with Dan Lanning, and they are going to continue to outwork people, Rob. That's what it's about. You mentioned Auburn. You know why you only got 3 of the top 33 kids? You got outworked. I can't imagine what Lanning and his staff would do at Auburn. I can't even – Rob, you'd be sick to your stomach what they could do for you from a recruiting standpoint. I'm just telling you. That's my opinion.
I don't doubt it one bit. And that's the thing is that you see this over and over. You look at Tennessee. You look at Bobby Hill all grown up from King of the Hill. Josh Heupel. That guy is incredible. Runner-up for the Heisman at Oklahoma. Won a national championship from South Dakota. Josh Heupel has ignited the Big Orange Nation. Yeah. They got that machine going up there. They're the 9th winningest program in the history of college football. Don't forget, from 1936 to 2004, Tennessee was the winningest program in college football. They only had 7 losing seasons in that 70-plus years. From 2005 until they brought in Josh Heupel, they had 9 losing seasons in 16 years. They're not going to stay down forever. They're coming out. We're about to go to the break, but hang on. But I want you.
I can take a question after. I got to tell you after the break. I want to say one thing before I go. I got to talk to you about Joe Milton and Tennessee football and what I think.
Yeah, because by the way, we're going to get Buddy Franz Beer to be on right after this, and I wish you could stay. I know you got a meeting, but we're going to come back. The all-time Muck team, the people from Lake Okeechobee, they call the Muck. That's a lot of Hall of Famers. Hey, Rob Browne with Matt Dean, RumbleBoxingGym.com, people. The best workout you've ever had. It's like swimming on land. It's awesome. We'll be right back. All right, let's keep rolling, man. So listen to Charlie Rich's greatest hits, by the way. Keep on rolling with the flow. Let's keep on rolling with the flow.
So before Joe Milton transferred to Tennessee, he was at Michigan.
Yep.
If you ever watched him play, great arm strength, great athlete, but didn't really click with Jim Harbaugh's offense, whatever, right?
Yeah. Yep.
He gets with Heupel, loses the job to Hooker, who had a phenomenal run at Tennessee. If he doesn't get hurt in the South Carolina game and they win that game, he stays in the game, they're in the college football playoff. We all know that, right? Which is ironic because that means Ohio State would not have been in the college football playoff after they lost to Michigan. But here's what I think. When they were getting ready to play the Orange Bowl, everyone's saying, well, I don't know about Tennessee. Boy, Joe Milton just shredded Clemson, right?
Yeah.
And let me just tell you this much. Credit to Josh Heupel in his development of quarterback play, his scheme, his offense. He's taking advantage of their skill. And a lot of times you don't see this come to fruition. Joe Milton lost his job, and now he's coming back. And I think he'll have a year like his predecessor had. I think Tennessee still that they're going to get Georgia at home this year, right? Because the rotational. It wouldn't shock me with Georgia going back-to-back national championships if that game could decide the whole thing in the East. It really could. I'm not saying that Tennessee's going to win the game. I don't want the Georgia fans on me. Okay, they were on me last year when Oregon lost to them 46-3. I couldn't even get back to my car. I was accosted several times wearing Oregon gear, trying to get back to my car after that game. Yeah, and that's how good I think Heupel's offense is. I think it's going to be really interesting. And, honestly, at some point we're going to see Florida get back in the mix for that SEC East. I don't know if it's this year or not, but I will tell you this. They got the number 4 draft choice. It was interesting because everyone wants to talk about, team success.
Yeah.
Individually, if Richardson gets the right coaching, lights out. He's going to be lights out in the NFL, I believe. I'm a little biased. I love today's quarterbacks are Jalen Hurts. Okay, they're not all Patrick Mahomes, and I think Anthony Richardson can be a Jalen Hurts clone. I really do.
Yeah, I mean he's certainly got the athletic ability and all, and Franz Beard
throwing 100 yards almost. My God, he's got the best arm I've seen.
Yeah, and everybody always talks about Buchholz High School and PK Young. He's from East Side, and Franz lives in Gainesville, and Franz and Ben Troop and Buddy Martin have talked a lot about him. He's far from a finished product, but you're right. What we think a quarterback is might be different from what the quarterbacks really are in the NFL. And they do. They get it wrong just like the college recruiting analysts do too, Matt.
Well, before I leave, I want to make sure I say hi to Franz because I always enjoy my interaction. One of these times, Franz, I need to find a place to get a beer with you. But the last thing I want to say is I honestly believe, and the reason I brought up Joe Milton with Heupel, I think coaching at the quarterback position is paramount. And that's why I think Richardson's going to go now to a situation where I think the Colts hired the Eagles offensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken, and I think he's going to develop into a fine quarterback. And I think that's the thing you got to have on your staff. I need an O-line coach that can protect and block, and I need a quarterback coach that can develop. It's not just about arm strength. It's about reads, coverages, everything. But
let me throw something in it, and that is very interesting. And I heard Rick Neuheisel talk about this last week before the draft. He said that what you got to do is in Sean Steichel's offense, he said he builds it from the quarterback from the legs up. You make the quarterback a threat to run on every single play so that you cannot bracket receivers. You can't run exotic coverages because you cannot have your cornerback with his back to you and all of a sudden the running, here's the running quarterback and he's 20 yards downfield and all of a sudden you turn around and say, oh my gosh,
that's right.
What am I supposed to do? And here you are, 5'11.5", 188 pounds, strong as you can be, but here comes a 6'4", 244-pound freight train that runs faster than you can, and now he has a 20-yard head of speed coming at you, and you're thinking to yourself, I really want to buy that boat. I really want to buy that boat. there's a Maybach Mercedes Benz that I could be driving instead of this Yugo. And I'm going to be driving the Yugo if I try to tackle this son of a gun, because I'll be out of the league. And that's the dilemma that is Anthony Richardson.
Yeah,
because if you build him from the legs up, he's faster than the corners and the safeties.
Yeah.
He's bigger than the linebackers. And all of a sudden you've got this guy who maybe, just maybe, might launch the ball 74 yards down the field, because I was there. The last throw he made at Pro Day was a 74-yard laser beam to Justin Shorter. And that's what they've got to figure out how to harness. And if they do, Matt, you are so right. They have caught lightning in a bottle in the form of Anthony Richardson.
You know, you're talking about Anthony Richardson. And Matt, you know, Buddy Martin wrote a great piece in GatorbaitMedia.com last week about him. He is the guy that broke all these measurables at the combines and everything like that. You just hit it, though, bringing in the offensive coordinator from Philadelphia, who probably helped a good bit with Jalen Hurts' development as an NFL quarterback. That right there gives a lot of fuel to the fire, beliefs, whatever you, and Anthony Richardson can be successful, because if he's not at the right place, he's going to be no different than any other quarterback. If you're not at the right fit and all like that, it's hard to make it work out. I think that's a very good harbinger, I believe, of things that are going to happen on the upside for Anthony. I'm pulling for him, not just because he's a Gator and I like my Gator men, you know, Franz, Buddy, and Ben, but his story, and Franz knows a lot more about him than I do. Or you about Anthony Richardson's story, and he's got Vernell Browne, who played for Urban Meyer at Florida. Ben said he hired him to help manage everything. All I can say is, if he was my client, I'd say, Anthony, put that money in the bank and live like you're making $45,000 a year. Just, you know, Barkley said it best when he spoke to those NBA rookies. All this money and all these people coming at you. He said, but you only need one house, one car, one bank account.
Well, let me tell you that we had a guy here named, and Matt, you probably remember him, Maurice Spates.
Yeah.
And Maurice Spates had a guy named Matt Ramker, who was his AAU coach. And Matt Ramker was like a dad to Maurice. And when Maurice got drafted, everybody's saying, well, you know what? He'll be out of the league in 2 years. He'll spend all his money. Matt Ramker did just what Rob was talking about. He put him on an allowance and said, hey, you know, I'm going to give you $5,000 a week to live on. And guess what? At the end of the $5,000, if there's 3 more days a week, that's tough. That's on you. Well, Maurice Spates ended up spending like 12 years in the league.
Yeah.
And living on $5,000 a week the whole time. And guess what? The other money got invested. And Maurice will never have to work as long as he lives. Now, he's doing good stuff for kids and stuff like that. But this is what Vernell Browne is there to do, is to put Anthony on an allowance and keep the posse away from him, because, I have a little bit of experience because somebody very close to me was the head of NBA security for Orlando. And so I've been there pregame with him before he died of mesothelioma because he was exposed to asbestos when he was in the Air Force many years ago. But I've been there and I've watched them drive up, and here they come up in their Rolls Royce convertible or their Maybach or whatever it is like that. And they come in and they've got an entourage of 25 people, and who's paying for that? Well, he is, what's your job? Well, I'm here. I'm his support. I'm his service dog, in other words. Get these, we had another guy here, Kwame Browne, signed here, should have come to college, but he didn't. And he goes pro, and all of a sudden he is surrounded by all these people. Kwame Browne's broke. Kwame Browne made $50 million, and he's broke.
Yeah.
I hate to get on a soapbox about this stuff on a Monday morning and start rambling, but guess what? This is Rob. This is what somehow we've missed the boat. I don't begrudge these athletes the money they're going to make. Anthony Richardson's getting a $23.8 million signing bonus. That's more money most people make in 10 lifetimes, much less one.
Yeah.
And there are going to be people coming at him, if he only could give me $322,000, I could get a Popeyes franchise.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? You remember the Beverly Hillbillies? Mr. Clampett had $85 million in the Commerce Bank of Beverly Hills. And he would want to go spend money, and Mr. Drysdale would just lose his mind. But, you got to have a little bit to live on. You shouldn't live an impoverished lifestyle. But
no,
the average NFL career is less than 5 years, Matt and friends. So when you're 26, 27 years old, are you set financially to live the rest of your life? Because I've been in this business 32 years now as a financial advisor. It's 32 years. I have never, ever, one time, ever have we had a family with a lot of money ever dole it out to 21 or 22-year-olds. It's incentive-based trust. It's age-banded trust. I study my clients' accounts. I watch them like a hawk. I do due diligence. Nobody has ever recommended anything that's not suitable for them. And I find out, I go 3 deep on the depth chart. I know my client. I know their kids. I know their grandchildren. Because if I don't and they die, that money, those accounts are walking out the door. But I find out who has access. I mean, we have had to literally go to banks and say, these are the only people who can come in here. And Matt Frederick, Anthony Richardson, you know what the number one thing they ought to be talking about on to the draft guys is FL, financial literacy. It's the most important thing, Matt. Do you talk to your kids about that at Rhodes? I mean, you got some kids that are very smart. I'm sure they get it, but you can't say it enough, can you?
No, and honestly, I think the league has done a better job. And Franz, it breaks my heart, the Kwame Browne story, and I don't want to mention any more, but it just breaks my heart because you talk about a young man that could have used a couple years somewhere prior to the next step. Mm-hmm. And you look at Rob, the whole financial literacy surrounded by the NIL. We've talked in this show before about, hey, sometimes if you get this money, you make sure you're filing your taxes. All those things have to happen. And usually the really good athletic departments have the resources to talk to some of these kids about those things prior to getting to the draft or getting to the professional level. But you're right, Franz, man. You got to, I call it, you got to shorten your circle. I mean, you got to get a circle of trust that's not outside of 3 or 4 people. And hopefully there's a mom and dad in that equation as well.
Well, Anthony has a mom that is absolutely outstanding. He really is. He wants to care for his brother, his younger brother, and his mom.
Yep.
And he's going to have Vernell with him to guide him because you got to give. I mean, there's no question. You get all this money, you can't just hoard it. You got to give, but you got to be smart about where you give. And that's the thing, you and I, Matt, and Rob, the 3 of us, we may come up with a scheme that's going to make the world's greatest yo-yo. I mean, and everybody's going to want to have our yo-yo and take it to school, And so kids, instead of playing on their cell phone, they're going to be playing with their yo-yo because we did it. Well, that may not be the most brilliant idea of all time. And, this is what Anthony Richardson and what Vernell's got to protect Anthony Richardson from. Guys who come to him with what seemed like a good idea at the moment, but long-term isn't. And that's what we got to avoid. And that's the thing that's going to make him, I think, more so as an NFL quarterback than people understand. Because if you've got all these worries outside of your life, they're going to affect your football life. Absolutely. And right now, he, remember what Vince Lombardi said? Your priorities are God, the Green Bay Pack, God, your mom and dad, your brother, your wife, and your kids, and the Green Bay Packers, and that's it.
That's right. Matt Dean, Franz, hold on a second. Matt's got to go. Matt, look, always love having you on here. Got to get you back on. Time it better next week because Franz is on Mondays in the top of the second hour. Franz Beard, we love having him on here. But I think the three of us together, we ought to start a firm. We'll be the Milburn Drysdale and Mr. Cushing from the bank who always tried to steal Mr. Clemens' business away. But Matt, 32 years and counting, Rhodes College. Man, I'd say run for president, but you're too good of a person to do so.
I got too many closets I don't want to open, guys. But Franz, I'll work on that yo-yo design until we speak again. Y'all have a great week. Take care.
Thank you now, Matt.
You do too, Matt. See you Thursday.
All right.
I love it. That is good old Midwestern common sense. He's from the Quad Cities. And the Quad Cities, Franz. Moline, Bettendorf, Davenport, and Rock Island. He's from Davenport. But been over at Rhodes College. A few smart people over there, 32 years and counting. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back with Franz Beard with the Monday Sidelines kickoff to your week. It is a great day. It's my favorite day of the week. It's also the first day of May. We celebrate that because it's the first day of the month when the football magazines start coming out. We'll be right back.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne, Franz Beard, Finance 101. Franz, can you imagine what it's like to be Anthony Richardson right now? Or any of these guys drafted? You have in a guaranteed signing bonus. The $33.9 million, I think, is the contract. That all of a sudden is in your bank account. And, you're just like, wow, I could do anything I want, within reason. I could buy a plane. I could do anything. And from what Ben Troop says and what you're saying, and Buddy Martin talked about it on the Saturday Roundtable, number one, the three of y'all, have forgotten more about Florida than anybody. But the people and the players, the coaches. But it sounds like Vernell Browne gave up his career there at Florida in all to help Anthony Richardson and guide him through all this. But that would make your head spin, to have that kind of money. I mean, my team and I, we manage a lot of money for a lot of people, and I take that seriously. I mean, it's just, I would rather be broke and honest than dishonest and rich.
Yeah.
Your honor is dearer than your life. That's just all that matters. But it sounds to me, when someone comes to us and trusts us, I mean, that is the greatest compliment you can have. Vernell Browne, I'd love to have him on the show. If you know Vernell,
I can arrange it. Let me tell you a story about Vernell. Let me tell you a quick story about Vernell Browne, and this will tell you about his character. Urban Meyer's first year here, his way of doing things, let's just say, conflicted with the way things had been done before. Florida goes up to South Carolina. It's late in the season, and Urban still got guys that are resisting. They lose to Steve Spurrier in South Carolina. Looks like the season is on the brink. Plane lands in Gainesville. And all of a sudden, Vernell Browne and Jarvis Herring and Jerome Mincy stand up in front of that group. Now, got to remember something. Vernell had broken his leg 3 weeks before, and he's on crutches, okay, in front. But he was such a great guy that Urban had him going on the games, even though he'd been injured. For 3 hours, these guys got up there and said, if you aren't with us, get the hell out of here. We're with Coach Meyer. Get out of here. If you don't like it, get out. We don't care. But quit conflicting with this team. Quit causing problems with this team. Well, guess what? They go out there from that point. They end up beating FSU, and FSU came in here and was supposed to beat the Gators, but did not. They go to the Outback Bowl and win. They finished 9-3 that year. And that was a team. But the next year, all of a sudden you look, there's a lot of faces missing that were there before.
Yeah.
And Vernell Browne is the guy that at that moment had the character to stand up and say, you're either with us or you're against us. If you're with us, you're welcome to stay. If you're against us, don't let the screen door hit you in the butt on the way out.
Yeah.
That's character.
Yeah.
And this is what I think is so much missing today in so many sports teams. We look at teams and we say, look at all this talent. Why can't they win? Well, I can tell you why. Because they don't have a character guy that's like a magnet for everybody on this team to say, I want to be around him. I want to be like him. I want to find out what he's got. I want the peace in my heart that he's got in his. I want the uncluttered brain that he has in my brain. And you look at all these teams out there, and you know they're running the NBA playoffs now, and I don't give two hoots about the NBA because I don't know if you saw that special on Enes Kanter Freedom about what he stands for and why. He starts talking about Nike and slave labor and things like this. He's been blackballed by the NBA. He's got a $500 million suit that he's going to win because of that. But my point being is this: you've got to have high character people. And if you don't have somebody who is a truly at least one guy that's a leader, that's truly a high character guy that people will follow, your team's never going to win championships. And the teams that win championships have that high character guy. You look back when the Spurs were good and they had David Robinson and then Tim Duncan, a guy like Matt Bonner who came off the bench and he now is, an amazing guy. You look at the Chicago Bulls and, Michael Jordan was a high character guy who people would follow anywhere. And Patrick Mahomes has that with the Kansas City Chiefs. Yep. And so forth. I listened to Bryce Young talk about how faith is his rock. That, he doesn't worry what anybody else says. He understands that he's got two people in life to please, and that's God and himself and nobody else. And if you're pleasing God and you're pleasing yourself, what else do you have to worry about?
Yeah.
And that's a guy I'll tell you what, Carolina Panthers, watch out for him. They got a high character guy that's going to lead them.
Oh, yeah.
Anthony is a high character guy. Just needs some guidance.
Yeah. You're right about that. I mean, what character is what makes men great. I love that Auburn creed. Athletics make men strong. Studies make men wise. Character makes men great. And character, again, we don't see it on TV much anymore. Leave It to Beaver this morning, Ward wrote the poem for the Beav about I want to be a bear, and he won the award. And he said, you can't accept that. You didn't write that. He went down and read it to Miss Rayburn, the principal, the surly old school marm that she was. And she goes, well, Ward, that's some fine work there. And he goes, well, but the Beav didn't write it, and he can't accept that award. That's important. Nobody else would have ever known, but God knows, and you know.
Yeah.
And when you put your head on the pillow at night, you know if you've done your best at work. You know if you've done your best out on the cross-country course. You know you've done your best in anything you do. But I remember when I was in school at Auburn, Tracy Rocker. Remember Tracy and David Rocker? Couple of pretty good football players. I mean, I knew a lot of guys on the team, and they were like, if it's halftime and you weren't putting out the effort, Tracy Rocker would go around that locker room and let you know what would happen if you didn't. And the airwaves and the decorum prohibits me listing a litany of nice words, but at 6'3", 285 pounds,
he gets your attention, doesn't he?
Yeah, he did. But he's a high character guy. And what's funny now is a friend of mine was a manager on the football team when Tracy Rocker was coaching at Auburn. And he used to say to the kids in practice, hey, you ain't out there delivering a bouquet of roses on Saturday, flatten their ass. Get after them. Get after them. Play a full 60. Tommy Agee, one of my favorite players out of Maplesville, Alabama. Love that guy. He used to say in practice one time, a friend of mine was out there writing. He was a reporter, and he said it was hot. It was about 170 in the shade. Tommy Agee got everybody over there in the huddle in this scrimmage. And Coach Dye said, we ain't leaving until you get it right. You can keep doing it until you do it right. We ain't leaving. Tommy Agee got over there and he said, come on now, come on. He goes, when you going to play Auburn, you ain't getting nothing for free. You're going to have to earn it. You're going to have to go a full 60. And that's what I love about sports. And you just went down a litany of teams and players. Damn right it matters who you've got out there. Patrick Mahomes, he seems like just a decent guy. And Vernell Browne. People need to be hearing these good stories out there. You go to the local reporters, the local sports anchors, the local writers. They get crapped on every day, and it's wrong. They're not having access to the coaches in these universities. I've been a reporter, but nothing to like my friend Dave Cody, 36 years alone just at Channel 7 in Austin, Texas. He knows these people. He has relationships with them. You know what's most important about that is Dave Cody would never go out there, and he's one of my mentors. I knew him when I was in college. I had an older brother, Bill Cody, that was an All-American at Auburn, played football. Yeah, everybody does. He was a badass. And the thing is, high character. He would never divulge something said in confidence, just like you and I talking, or you talking to Urban Meyer or Steve Spurrier. Relationships build trust. Trust build relationships. Without those, you got nothing. And I think the NFL draft, it's incredible to see all these people around these people. And it's great to celebrate with your family and all, but don't turn in-laws into outlaws.
Exactly. Don't die the death of 1,000 cuts, because your eighth cousin 9 times removed comes up to you. Hey man, can you loan me $868 so I I want to upgrade my apartment, or I need a new 70. I need a new 77-inch TV. You know, on with satellite, so I can watch all your games. Because I'm going to be back here. I'm going to be pulling for you in the community, and we'll be holding that together.
Yeah,
and that's the kind of thing. Most guys in the NFL and other pro sports that I found who go broke, they don't go broke typically by investing $150,000 into something. They go broke because they've got too many people around them saying, I need my $868. I need $1,455. And here, you look at it. If you're on a $10,000 a week allowance, which is a lot of money, and you're on a $10,000 a week allowance, and all of a sudden, okay, I gotta, I'm taking care of my mom, so that's $1,000 a week. I'm sending my little sister to college, that's $500 a week, and on and on and on. And then all of a sudden they realize, wait a second, you mean I got to pay tax on this? You mean my $10,000 a week? All of a sudden, the first 37% of it's gone, so I'm really only got $6,300. Oh, yeah, we got Social Security, another 7%. So that's $700. So now all of a sudden I'm down to $5,600. Wait, you mean I got to pay state income tax where I am? And all of a sudden my state income tax, let's say I'm in California, is 13.3%.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, wait a second, you mean another $1,330 is gone? Now I'm looking at $4,300.
Yep.
And these guys don't surround themselves too often with people who will sit there and explain to them, okay, yeah, you got obligations, but remember this, there's also this obligation to Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
Who says, you got to pay tax on it, and at the amount of money they're making, they're in the 37% bracket. And I guess, if the man in the White House has his way, it'll be up to about 45%.
Yeah. You know what, Franz? We heard name the player nor the school, but it involved NIL, and he had blown through all this money, and they were talking about his, W-2. He was going to have to pay the taxes, and his accountant and him were talking, and he said, what do you mean I've got to pay taxes on the money? I've already spent it. I mean, see where we're going here. And, the one thing, when you sign a will, you typically are supposed to have 3 disinterested parties there. Okay. 3 disinterested parties. Remember that. Not people who have an interest in getting something from you. And I know there's a quarterback in the NFL who had a meltdown when he was playing for his team because he cut off his family members because they were just beating him, wearing him out about money. They wouldn't talk to him once he did that.
Yeah.
And watch the documentary about the NFL. Remember Trent Richardson out of Escambia County High School, same place Emmitt Smith played at Alabama. And Trent talked about all these people. He was the number 4 pick in the draft by the Indianapolis Colts out of Alabama. And he said, I looked up one day and I had, you ready for this, Franz? 11 Netflix accounts. I'm like, who are these people? And, I'm trying to think here. Some of the players like Mike Tyson, it certainly didn't help.
How much money did Don King steal from Mike Tyson?
Yeah. When Don King is your financial advisor, you might as well have Chairman Mao and Stalin in charge of human rights.
Yeah.
But he went through what I think Mike Tyson they stole, or he went through $400+ million. I mean, how's that happen? You know what? Read the book, The Art of Being a Billionaire by Donald Trump. He says, no matter how many accountants and attorneys and bookkeepers, whatever you want to call them, that I have on the payroll, I still know how to read a dadgum balance sheet, debits, credits, ledger sheet. If you love your children, before you give them their first pony ride, their first shotgun, you take them fishing, teach them how to read a balance sheet, friends, a debit and ledger sheet. If you don't have that, you're going to have a lot of tough times. Money's great, but again, was told by a smart girl one time, if money can solve it, it's really not a problem. But money can create a lot of. Most of my clients that I've worked with over the years will tell me, when we were married and had 3 or 4 kids running around the house and we didn't have a whole lot of money, we were a lot more. Life was just easier. Now that I've got $20 million, I go to a family reunion. Everybody's loving on me. Remember when Elvis died? I was a small boy in Memphis. I was at Sears in Laurelwood, Poplar and Perkins. I was getting a pretzel with mustard on it and an icy and a hot dog. And they broke through the news on Channel 5 that Elvis was dead. You know what the top marginal tax bracket was August 16th, 1977? I think it was 73%. Elvis had 8 cousins coming out of the woodwork. Friends, I didn't know people had 8 cousins because I didn't think that was possible. But everybody suddenly was related to Elvis. Yeah, right. We'll be right back. Franz Beard and Wess Moore will be with us from ESPN 103.7 The Buzz. We are back here with Franz Beard, GatorBetMedia.com, and Wess Moore to be joining us here momentarily from ESPN 103.7 The Buzz in Little Rock. And Franz, we all see it every single time a guy's drafted. It's nice to have your friends there to celebrate, but how many of them are there when you're broke to help you get back up off the ground? They're all there when the wind is at their back. Your real friends are there when the wind's blowing in your face. But ultimately, you know what? They all love to get inked up with tattoos and everything. And I'm not for that crap. I don't have any. But if I was going to get one, it would say sua sponte on it, which is Latin, of course, for of your own accord, your own volition. You've got to ultimately do it yourself. And I like Bryce Young. I'm pulling for that kid.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be.
If you pull against Bryce Young, you have rocks in your head.
Yeah,
this is a kid that is for all the right things and against all the wrong things, and we don't have enough kids like that anymore. I remember a couple of weeks ago you got on one of your lovely tantrums, and I like them. When you were talking about kids who are, it's all about me, and there's something to be said about a kid that really and truly is about the team, that really and truly has his heart in the right place. Bryce Young knows, first and foremost, he knows that God has to be first in his life. He knows his mom and dad are there for him, and so forth like this. He's got the right people in the right place. What I feel badly about, Rob, is we got so many of these kids growing up, and it's easy to rail on the kids.
Yeah.
When the reality is you got, Tony Dungy talks about this, about how we got so many kids coming who are from broken homes and they don't know any better. And this is why you've got to have, absolutely positively have to have, coaches are not doing their job if they don't incorporate into their organization people who will explain this is, I'll never forget, we had a guy at Armstrong State College back when I was in Savannah, and this dates me back 50 years ago. But he suddenly, he goes out there and he writes a check and it bounces, and all of a sudden he says, I don't understand. I got all these checks. And he didn't understand that your checks were only good for how much money you had in the bank. He thought as long as he had checks, he had money. So he's writing checks all over the place. And here's this guy who could have taken Armstrong, to championship levels, and he's got bounced checks all over the city. Why? Because he didn't know any better. And this kind of stuff happens too often. And we get kids who basically probably have a good heart, but nobody has ever, because they've been raised, they've been raised by grandmothers or aunts and uncles or something like that, because mom's working 4 jobs and they don't, and there's no dad in the home. There's something to be said about having a mom and dad at home to give you that guidance and give you that foundation.
Absolutely, it is. You cannot say it enough times about surround yourself with great people and get the best guests you can get. Wes Moore over in Little Rock, ESPN 103.5, 103.7 The Buzz. Also sports anchor, Fox Sports Channel 16, Franz, does a great job covering the natural state. Wes, man, we've been talking a lot about football, about the draft, about baseball, but Hogs, LSU, man, this is tightening up in the SEC West. Let's get your thoughts on where the Omaha Hogs stand right now.
I'll tell you what, they're really good at home, aren't they? They got another sweep over the weekend over Texas A&M. The Aggies came into Baum-Walker Stadium kind of hot. They had won 4 straight SEC series, and they had evened their record up in the SEC. And Arkansas made them look bad. And A&M did not play well. They made a lot of errors. They walked a lot of batters. And for the first time, really in a long time, Arkansas played small ball. And they were bunting, moving guys around. A&M was throwing the ball around, and they would just keep running and putting pressure on that A&M defense. And, you had the big home runs on Thursday night, the grand slam, and then the 2-run home run to win it in the 8th inning. But besides that, on Friday and Saturday, it was a lot of small ball, a run here, run there, and just kept adding to the lead. And Arkansas's baseball team's really good at home. Now the test will be for them to go out on the road and win an SEC series against Mississippi State. Because you remember the last time, and Van Horn said this, forget about the record. You're in the SEC. Everybody's good in the SEC. There may be some teams that are struggling a little bit or down a little bit, but everybody's got talent. Everybody's good in the SEC. You went to Georgia, and Georgia at the time was one of the worst teams in the SEC East, and you got swept. Well, don't think just because you're going to Mississippi State and they're struggling, you're going to go in there and win that series. You got to go in there and play well.
Yeah, isn't it crazy? I mean, you're so right about the competition. And, LSU did not get to finish that one game with South Carolina. They're sitting there at 15-5. Arkansas is at 14-7. They're right there on the cusp. And hell, Auburn went up to South Carolina, number 2 in the country. Won the first 2, was up and lost late 8-7 in the 3rd game. The week before, South Carolina swept Franz's Florida Gators. Wes, there's nowhere to hide in this league.
No. And you look at some of the schedules, and I like to call it a gauntlet, but Tennessee did that. They had a gauntlet of just tough series after tough series But that's
Oh,
every
yeah.
team in the SEC is going to go through that because that's how good the SEC is with so many top 10 teams. You're going to have a stretch of games that it's going to be rough, and you're going to struggle. It's the teams who survive, really, and I've heard that from old Razorbacks, and the Van Horn and his staff were always great, and they still do it. Just survive. Let's just go out, try to get a home regional, super regional, do what you can. But the main thing is survive SEC play and be ready when the NCAA tournament comes, because you never know what can happen once you get out of SEC play. And we saw that last year with this Arkansas team. They were struggling down the stretch. They looked like they were dead in the water. And then they put it all together, go on the road, Oklahoma State, win the regional, go on the road, and win North Carolina, win that super regional. And then they're in Omaha. You saw that with Ole Miss. You saw it with Mississippi State the last 2 years. I mean, just survive the SEC and get into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, Franz.
Well, here's the thing that Florida's a perfect example. And you're right about getting hot at the right time. Florida last year, through 45 games, Wyatt Langford had hit 15 home runs, was having a pretty good year, and then from 45 to onward, the next 21 games, he hits 11 home runs, got hot as a pistol, and Florida suddenly goes from a team that everybody wondered if they were even going to make a regional to a team that hosts a regional, and if not for a rain delay, probably goes on to a super regional. And you got so much of this sport is so good, that this league is so good in this sport, is what I'm trying to say, that there are there's no free passes. I mean, Arkansas is going to go to Mississippi State, and there's going to be 16,000 people there. And believe it or not, some of them might have had a beer or two, or three maybe in some cases. And those people are going to be screaming their lungs out, and they can be very, very intimidating. And that's a team that's got talent, and we keep wondering, when is Mississippi State going to put it together? Just like we saw with Georgia. Georgia comes in there, and all of a sudden bushwhacked Arkansas. Just like Auburn goes in there, and I'm sure South Carolina thought, boy, this is an easy sweep. Well, guess what? It wasn't, because there are no easy games, no easy teams to play in the SEC. You got to go to the ACC or the Big Ten. You want to have weekends off, and still play the game.
Yeah, Wes, I'm with Franz. Arkansas gets swept by Georgia. Seriously, and now you mentioned Tennessee. Who wants to play them right now? They're on a roll. Tony Vitello, one of the most beloved coaches in the league.
I tell you what, they came into Fayetteville, I guess it was 2 weekends ago and 3 weekends ago now, and they got swept by Arkansas. And I watched every one of those games, and I tell you, I was kind of disappointed in Tony Vitello and that Tennessee team. I thought, watching that series, they're just not very good. The pitching was disappointing. The hitting, they didn't do. I remember adding up the runs for that weekend, and that Arkansas staff that weekend gave up the fewest runs of anybody else in the SEC in that weekend. And part of that's on the Tennessee offense. But I guess you got to give some credit, a lot of credit to the Arkansas pitching staff. But Tennessee just didn't look very good, hitting, fielding, or pitching. And I was ready to write them off. Then they lose a midweek to, who was it, Tennessee Tech or somebody?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, they're done. And then they go out and look what they've done since then. So, Vitello, tip of the hat to him, man. He's turned that thing around, and they're playing much better now.
Ever since they beat Florida in that third game, because Florida just totally killed them the first two up in Knoxville, and all of a sudden they just caught fire in that third game, and they have been on a roll ever since. I think they've won 7 straight SEC games since then.
They have. And like Franz is saying, Wes, this league prepares you. You can be sub 500 and still get to Omaha. It happens every year.
Yeah, that's why everybody keeps saying on TV the magic number is 14 SEC wins. Get to 14, get in the NCAA tournament, and like I said earlier, you get out of league play. Who knows what happens? Because this league is so difficult that it just prepares you. You know, it's iron sharpens iron, right? It just prepares you to play somebody else, and it's like the coaches used to say it's a breath of fresh air when you get out of SEC play. You can relax a little bit because the competition is not nearly as difficult. So, and then you get in the postseason, and usually what knocks an SEC team out is another SEC team when they get matched up in the super regional.
Yeah,
I think right now that there are 6 teams that are going to host a regional, and that is Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Florida, and Kentucky in the East, and LSU in Arkansas. 6 teams. And out of those 6 teams, I'd be willing to bet you 4 or 5 of them are top 8 seeds.
Yeah. Wes, where are you from in Texas? Which town? Plano?
Jacksonville.
That's right, Jacksonville. Okay. You think about, I got to ask you this real quick, a football question. We're about out of time. But in the portal right now, I know basketball-wise, Arkansas is doing really well. With Eric Musselman, that's kind of like saying, what's for dinner tonight? Who's cooking? Gordon Ramsay. Well, you know what's going to happen there. You don't have to worry about basketball, and I'm not even going to get into that. Let's talk football. Any surprises that you see the Fighting Pittmans about to grab in football portal?
No. They've got their eyes on, there are a couple of positions that Arkansas needs to get some depth. Tight end, they kind of filled the portal with the kid from North Texas. I guess that was last weekend or 2 weekends ago.
Good pick up there.
Look, they could always use a little bit more depth on the defensive line and linebacker and wide receiver. If there's a wide receiver out there that they could add that's a true playmaker, a go-to guy, I know Arkansas would add one of those. But no, there's no surprises. I think they have one player leave enter the portal after spring practice, and this was a guy who came in as a quarterback, got moved to tight end, then moved to wide receiver. Great looking athlete, big arm, but just couldn't never figure it out as a quarterback, and didn't make it as a wide receiver. He was running third team in spring, so he entered the portal, and I get it. You know what? He wants to play, and now he can go and find a school where he can play. So, but no surprises, no.
Yeah. Hey, and another thing, Wes, we were over in Wynn last night, went back over there where the tornado hit there, especially downtown. Amazing, the cleanup over there. And I hope things are getting better in Little Rock. And you cover high school football. Hats off to, I would say, the old commercials. We salute you, Mr. Local Sports Anchor, but I'm not going to mention that company's name. I'd be ashamed to. But anyway, you do a phenomenal job on TV, and having, been in TV some, and I love it. You're a positive, upbeat. Jeff Heimbach, my friend, lived in Little Rock. He knows he's the one who told me to get you on the show. But you do a great job of finding the good stories. Have you been over to Wynn to see what we drove by the high school last night? And sadly, it's a pile of concrete rubble, but they're back in school. They're getting ready. What's that done to different high schools in Wynn, Little Rock, whatever, preparation for this upcoming year? Because they ain't going to sit around and feel sorry for themselves. They're winners.
No, as far as Central Arkansas, the only thing it did for the high schools is bring them together, because you had so many of these teams that took this opportunity to volunteer as a unit, as a group, to go out and help, because what do you need? You need some muscle. What does the football team have? That's muscle.
Yeah,
so a bunch of young guys going out and hauling trees around and moving stuff around that needed to be done for all these people. That's the only thing it's done here. When I can't imagine. That's just how difficult and the things that they're going through, and that's what they need to get back to normalcy, and sports can bring that for them. That's a good idea, actually, to check on Wynn and see what about spring practice, because most people, spring practice in Arkansas is going to start this week, and so that would be a great story idea to see what Wynn is going to do and how it's affecting their spring football. So you just gave me a story idea.
You go. Well, look, Wes, there's a lot of people over there. I was talking about you, and I just like, you go by there, they're finding excuses to win, but love watching you on Fox Sports Channel 16. Tell people about your show, how they can keep up with you and Franz, GatorbaitMedia.com. Catch him Monday through Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, the Buddy Martin Show on Facebook, Twitter, and everywhere. And Wes, give your information. As always, Wes, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to share it with us on Sidelines. We never, ever will underappreciate what you do.
You bet. You guys, I'd encourage you to go and download the Buzz app, or you can just listen to us on 1037thebuzz.com. We'll be on in about 15 minutes. Bubba Carpenter's coming on the show today to talk a little Razorback baseball and that sweep over the weekend. And today, for the first time, Jace Borfin, we've signed him to an NIL deal. He will be joining us at 11:30. I'm trying to get the time right in my head because we have Bubba at 10:30 and Jace Borfin at 11. So join us to hear Jace and talk a little Razorback baseball with him. Man, he had an outstanding weekend. He had over 500 this weekend. So maybe a little buzz karma got Jace Borfin going this week. And we're going to talk with B.J. Thompson. He is from England, Arkansas. He was the only kid from the state of Arkansas drafted. He went from England, Arkansas to Baylor. He transferred out of Baylor and went to Stephen F. Austin, but he's a defensive end, was drafted in the 5th round by the Kansas City Chiefs, and he's going to come on today to talk about being a Kansas City Chief and getting drafted and coming from a small town in Arkansas and making it to the NFL.
Hey, I love it. I know where England is. It's 23 miles west of Stuttgart, just south of Slovak, not too far from Lonoke, isn't it?
You know exactly where it is.
You damn right. Hey, and if you're lucky, you can go to Craig's Barbecue over there on Highway 70 in Duval's Bluff. But hey, folks, great show as always because we have great guests. God bless our listeners. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. Most often see the face of Christ in the least among us. Go out and find excuses to win and don't give to get, give to give. Until then, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.